How's that? Got sound now? How's that? Well, it's showing the microphones are working, so that should be okay. There we go. Excellent. See, I don't need somebody to babysit me. I can figure it out on my own. Sooner or later, anyway. Good morning. I'm glad everybody's here. Oh, it's so nice to see all these names popping up. Sue Potts, hello, sweetie, and Carol Mays, and Penny Fredericks, and Robin R. Hello, Robin. You thought you went deaf. And who else is here? Dee Stratton, and Karen Shod, hello. And Beth Root, oh my goodness, everybody's here today. So glad to have you all with me. Today we're going to be painting in the Christmas garden. I really love this series with the watering cans, and I just think they're so fun, and I needed to do one for Christmas. So hence the one with all of the little holly leaves and whatnot. So I think you guys will really enjoy this. Next week we're going to be doing a floral because I haven't done a floral in forever, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I need to take a break from the Christmas stuff because I have about 10 Christmas designs lined up that I went on a little binge. But I need to paint a flower or two. So we're going to be doing that next week. But today we're going to be doing this watering can, and I just love this series. Usually if I really love a piece, I will frame it and hang it up in my home because I paint the things that I love. And I currently have all of those hanging in my house because there's something about them. There's such a something about them. Anyway, so that's why we're doing a Christmas one. And probably have one more. We'll do a spring one or something. Just because. Just because. So that's what we're going to be doing for that. I do have to say thank you to a couple of people. Linnell, Caustic Watcher. I got a lovely card from her the other day. The mail is starting to move, and I finally got a whole bunch of flyers and a couple of letters and a lovely card from Linnell, and I wanted to say thank you very, very much. It was such a sweet gesture. Just made me feel really good. So thank you. And oh, sorry, got distracted. Saw something on the chat. We're going to be doing some fun pieces in the next little bit. My pal Deb and I have sort of brainstormed while she was here, and we came up with a couple of really interesting surfaces that I think you guys are going to love. They are going to be available on her website, so if you're Canadian and you need to have something shipped at a reasonable price, Deb is phenomenal. She's got great surfaces. She will have them available on her website. And I will have them available on mine. I will be continue shipping to the US. So it's taken a little bit of work, but I think we've got it figured out so that we can get it to you within reason. So that's the whole idea, is trying to keep costs affordable for everybody. I have never liked the shipping system the way it is, simply because I find it's so expensive. So we have done everything that we possibly can to mitigate those costs. So hopefully it all works out. Oh, Judy Galt's painting in her studio. Surprise! Nice. And giveaways. Of course, we have to have giveaways. So we have some really nice ones today. We've got some nifty new stencils coming in the near future. So I've added those to the giveaway today. I've added some new Christmas stencils to the line. We'll have those available soon. So we've got a small amount that we've got we're given for giveaways. So we have some really neat Christmas stencils coming up. We've got Christmas pattern included, a nifty surface, and of course we've got some Dynasty brushes. Everybody got to have Dynasty brushes. So we've got some Dynasty brushes in there as well. Each of those prize packs is worth roughly $50 US, which is a nice little giveaway. So if you want to get your name on the wheel, all you have to do is hit all the buttons, the like, the share, the hello, the good morning, and join us in the chat, whether you're on Facebook or on YouTube. Just join us in the chat. Say hello, say good morning, chat with your friends, ask a question, whatever you want to do. But join us in the chat. We copy and paste the list of everybody watching. It goes onto the wheel. And at the end of the live, we spin the wheel for 3 names. And each of those will get one of those giveaways. So we have a generous giveaway today because Dynasty's been incredible for us. They've been so generous. So we have some really nice brushes to give away this week. So keep your eyes open, hit all of those buttons, the likes, the shares, and most of all, the subscribe button on my YouTube channel. And your name goes on the list. Maybe you'll win. Who knows? But in the meantime, we're going to have a little bit of fun with stencils, paintbrushes, and paint. And we're going to be working on this piece that's right behind me. Right here. This one. I love this one. There we go. No glare. This is, it says be merry. Somebody thought it said be messy, which probably could have. It's me. So be merry. Fun little piece. It's called Christmas in the Christmas Garden. And if you guys are ready to paint, so am I. In the Christmas garden. I love garden. My garden is done for the season. And it was prolific this year. I had more tomatoes than I knew what to do with. Let's see. Who else here? I gotta say hi to a few people. Mary Davis. Hello. And Lisa Morgan. Hello, Lisa. Judy Thacker. Hello, Deb. And is my Deb in here? I thought I saw the name. Where's my Deb? Nope, guess not. I don't see her. Morning at Deb Antonik. Deb's been creating some really beautiful surfaces for me. So, Jackie Wright, hello from Michigan. And Cheryl Figa, hello. And Carol Colbert, hello. Donna Baker. Yeah, our tomato plants are going out this weekend. She is here somewhere. And this is, I like this one. There's something about these old beat up watering cans that just appeals to me. Hi, Debbie. And Trisha Tyler. And Robin Storm. Hello, Robin. Okay. So we're going to start this piece. We're going to build background first. And this is a really simple one, but I love the elegance of this. It's pretty. So I have 2 coats of lamp black on my background. And the color that I'm going to use for the stenciling is cobblestone. I like this. It's a nice warm gray. I really like it because I've painted both my bathrooms this color. It's so pretty with navy blue and black. It looks so good. A little bit of white. It's very nice. So we're going to use a subtle application of this. So I'm using a 1/2 inch Dynasty Stencil Pro stencil brush. And we're going to swirl into a little bit of cobblestone in both directions. And we're going to blot it on some paper towel. Now, I usually start my stenciling away from the design element. So it started out here like this. The reason for that is if there's any little, fully wet spot on the stencil, then it's going to come off on the plastic and not on the painted surface. Oh my goodness. Renee, if you're wondering what that noise was, that was Renee. They're doing yard work today while I'm in here painting. I think I got the better deal. So he just knocked on the window to make sure we got off okay. So we're not looking for fully opaque. We want a nice dusty look. The surface that I'm using is an 8x10 piece of MDF. You can use an 8x10 canvas if you want. So again, start out on the plastic. of the stencil, an open area, like a larger area like this in the corner. And that way you don't get those big wet streaks. And Serena Copley, hello. What's for dinner tonight? Yum. I have some green beans, some fresh green beans. The last of my garden's giving. So fresh green beans. And we are having ravioli. And I'm doing steak on the grill. So the ravioli that we're having are actually stuffed with ricotta. So ricotta stuffed. And then I have a nice light marinara to go on the ravioli. When I say ravioli, I'm not talking about little ones. I'm talking like this big. These big raviolis. So you put 2 or 3 on a plate with steak and a veggie and you're good to go. Oh, pulled pork. Yum. I've been trying to get my hands on a decent shoulder or a butt so I can make pulled pork. My husband loves pulled pork. But for whatever reason, I just can't seem to get a decent one. So there is our first stenciling. As I said, it is not fully opaque. It's going to look a little dry, a little soft. Isn't that pretty? Now, this is a stencil that is difficult to get, I'll be honest. I do have some, but to be perfectly honest, you could use any kind of elegant pattern. So if you have a nice brocade, that will work as well. If you have a nice lacy pattern, that will work nicely. Or if you have something that's just swirls, it will work nicely. It doesn't have to be this stencil. I'm usually, for this type of a background, I usually look for something that has a little elegance to it. Like a vintage wallpaper or something like that. That's all you really need. It doesn't have to be exactly this one. As pretty as this is, this is one of my favorite stencils, not because of the stencil itself, but because of the design. It's a very old brocade pattern. And I've used this for a lot of things. Most effectively, I used it on my kitchen cabinets. This one in particular, I did a raised relief on all my kitchen cabinet doors in the center panel only. And then the cabinets were all painted white and just left this raised design. So it's very subtle, but it's very pretty. And it's been up there for almost 12 years now. And aside from perhaps needing a fresh coat of paint, it still looks fantastic. And even the fresh coat of paint I don't think is absolutely essential. It's over time it's worn. After 12 years, it's starting to look a little worn. But it does not look dated, which is one of the reasons I used this particular stencil. And also the reason that I went with just white instead of aging it or antiquing it. It doesn't need it. So it's a very pretty stencil and it works very well. So there's number 2. There we are. So I'm going to, there we go. I got that bass backwards here. Sorry. Pardon my, where am I? There I am. I like to tuck that in a little. Tape it in place. It does not have to be perfect. We're going to distress this anyway, so don't worry about getting it utterly perfect. My kitchen cabinets. I love my kitchen cabinets. I think that they're very pretty. I I don't even know if I have my photos on here. Of course I do. What was I thinking? I will dig up those photos and show you guys what the cabinets look like. Okay, that's brilliant. How do I clean my stencils? Actually, that's a great question, and I'm going to show you how I do that as soon as I'm done here. Cleaning stencils is one of those things. I have actually a pretty easy system for that. And I don't like grimy stencils. I'm notorious for leaving my stencils dirty for the longest period of time and then cleaning them in batches. I don't really worry about it because I have a system for cleaning them that works quite well. So it's not unusual for me to have a dish full of stencils that are in need of cleaning. Okay. So I'm going to put that one in place. We'll finish this up. I love stenciled backgrounds. They're a great way to build movement, to build pattern, and they also build some contrast. It's very rare that I just have a flat black background or a flat background of any sort, because I think a lot of the time a design is supported better by something in the background, and it doesn't have to be much. Most people assume that you have to have some big, busy, evolved background back there, but honestly, you really don't. So, Milena, the color was cobblestone. So, I'm going to grab a sanding sponge here. I can reach my drawer. There we go. And we're going to lightly sand this. Just lightly. We just want to softly distress these. I just don't want them glaring. There we go. That's it. I'm just wearing them down a little. And then I'm going to take a piece of shop towel and a little bit of clean water and wipe off the dust. Just like that. So the idea being is that you just want to lightly distress this. Hi, Diane. And Corinna, hello. How are things in Nova Scotia? There we are. So we've got, oh goodness, there. So we have nice, lightly, subtly distressed. You see how soft that looks? I love that this is soft. It looks delicate this way. We don't want to have a ton of color back there. So I'm going to use my favorite fugly brush and a little bit of lamp black. Now I've worn this fairly well, so I don't think I'm going to need much black for this. And then I'm going to thin this out with either glaze or water. We want it very thin. And you're going to put a light wash of heavily thinned lamp black over top of your background. Like so. And that little bit of black just mutes this even further. There we go. And it makes it very subtle. So I'll dry that really well. Better yet, I'm going to set this aside. And I'm going to show you how I clean a stencil. So, little bit of shop towel. I'm going to put something under it because I don't want to. Okay. So, a little bit of shop towel right there. And this stencil is pretty grimy. It's it's been used a bit and it hasn't seen a whole lot of care. So I'm going to put my tape back on and tape it to my surface. I'm going to take my stencil brush that I used to stencil with, and this is just hand sanitizer. So I'll put a little hand sanitizer on my surface. And I'm going to take my stenciling brush and I'm going to distribute that hand sanitizer all over the stencil. Just like that. And I'm just scrubbing with the stencil brush. Wherever there's paint, hand sanitizer will almost immediately break down the acrylic in paint. So, as you can see a lot more of that design. Look at that. So, there we go. Give it a good scrub. Now, it has the added benefit of cleaning your stencil brush. No paint. And then I'm going to take a piece of shop towel and wipe off the excess like so. And I'll remove the tape. And wipe off my stencil. Now, the back is going to have a little bit on it, so what do? You flip over your paper, put your stencil down on the shop towel, and voila. Perfectly clean stencil. It's the easiest way to clean these stencils, and I'll be honest, this one has had about 3 weeks worth of goo on it, so there you go. That's how you clean a stencil. Fast and easy. Hello.
Hello. Everything take off?
Everything took off fine except the mic wasn't turned on. There we go. So here's our background. And this is what you're looking for, is the subtlety. There we go. So now you have this muted background. It has pattern. And it has subtlety. And there's still that elegant look to it. So it's super easy to do. Just don't put on too much paint. That's easy. So there you go. That is your background built up. It's ready to go. Trace and transfer your line drawings. And you're ready to paint in the Christmas garden.
And the magic of TV.
Ta-da!
Ta-da.
Through the magic of television. Not only that, but I've got one ready for the next one. Which will probably be a spring one.
Spring?
A spring.
Be messy?
Mary.
That's saying what the spring one should say.
Be messy. Spring has sprung.
Be messy.
Go away.
There's a dog trying.
Yep, with a glow-in-the-mouth ball.
Blow in the mouth.
So the color we're going to use for the watering can is this one, Williamsburg Blue. It's a very old color, but I just love it for this. I just think that it's such a great tone for these watering cans. They kind of have the...
As per your request.
Ew, it's gooey.
It's gooey.
She was sharing.
Yeah. You wanted to make sure everybody got to see it.
No, Jan, if you have concerns about using hand sanitizer on stencils, works like a charm and it does not damage the stencil itself. Hot water does more damage to stencils than anything else. So here we go. We've got Williamsburg blue is the color of our stencil, or our watering can, sorry. And the first color that I'm going to use on this is called Red Spice. I love this color. It's like the perfect rust color. It's great. Combine this with asphaltum and you've got the perfect rust color. So we're going to put some rust on our watering can. I'm going to use a 3/8 faux squirrel angled shader. And I'm going to use a little bit of Joe Sonia. I do love my Joe Sonia. Fast drying glaze is like the best thing since cookies. So I've got little Joe Sonia in my brush and I'm going to pick up a little bit of that red spice. Blend it well on your palette. Make sure that you've got a nice load, nice float of color. Hi, Beth and Shirley Coleman. Hello. So we're going to start by adding some patches of rust. And I use the red spice. I love this color. And I will brush a little on like a float. And then I will pull down. Little tap and pull motion. I like to bring the rust so that it looks like the water has created it. So it needs to run down a little bit. And that tap and pull motion will help you bring the color down. And at the same time, gives you a bit of control over it. And I like it in patches. I don't like to see it all over the place. And you're going to do above and below as well. Don't forget, we need an above and below. Inside that handle. Now, if you stop and think about how watering cans are used, how they're filled, etc., it helps make the rust look a little more realistic. So generally the water comes out of the spout at this side, so you're going to have some rust on the underside of that spout. And of course at the edges of the lid as well, on the front. See how it's run down like here? Inside the handle, and particularly across the bottom, you have to pay a little attention across the bottom. So whenever you're putting rust on, you have to think about how the item is used and how water would flow off of it. It does help. And I do love this color for this. So there's our little bit. I'm going to bring it along the bottom like so. Now, how much of this you do is entirely up to you. If you want the can to look newer or less rusty, then by all means, use less of it. It's not imperative that you use a ton of this color. The only thing that is imperative is where you put it. And I do love a little rust. Now, it can be light, it can be dark. You can control how much of this you use. You don't have to have a ton of it on there. But I do love having a little, especially on that spout. I think it's really important to have it on the spout, particularly on the underside, because that's where the water would naturally flow. So never a bad idea to bring a little in. There we are. Now, you can put as much of this on as you like. So if you want this can to really look beat up and really rusty, then by all means, use as much or as little as you want. But I do like to make sure that we have color galore. I love having this color in here. I just think that it does wonders for this can. I'm going to bring a little in here. So I just think it would run along that edge. Easy peasy. The best part about this is these floats don't have to be perfect. They do not have to be perfect. You can run them along. You can have little patches here and there that for no rhyme or reason. So if you wanted to have like a little patch over here, just in the middle of nowhere, absolutely. Why not? It's a rusty old can. It's bound to get patches. And then you can bring a little bit, and then you can pull it down like it looks like it's been running off of that can. So again, as I said, much as you want. And Debbie, the color that I'm using is this one, Red Spice. I love this color. It's such a great color. Ramona. Ramona's not getting any sleep. She's got a new puppy. So we've got, look at all that rust. Isn't it yummy? Love it. So I'm going to dry this. And then we're going to use a little bit of asphaltum in a couple of places. And then when we start shading this can, we're going to be shading it with a little bit of deep midnight blue. I love midnight blue. When you see what it does over top of this rust, it's going to look awesome. So where's my deep midnight blue? There it is. Deep midnight blue and asphaltum. That's the, oops. I love this color, of course. And a little bit of asphaltum. Asphaltum is our toning color. That's going to keep everything warm and cozy. So I'm going to switch to a large brush. I'm going to go to a 1/2 inch. Hi, Jess. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of that deep midnight blue. And we're going to float right over the rust in a few places. This is our shading color. So we're going to shade on this side, and it's okay to go right over that rust. Don't worry, it'll work. Promise. Now, these floats are going to get a little wider as we work. I'm going to walk that out a little bit. There we go. And we're going to get that blue up underneath all of those leaves. There we go. And that little float does wonders for that orangey tone. It gives it a nice deep, rich look. Oops. There we go. And our can starts to look a little more rustic as we do this. I can't reiterate enough that the more layers, the more depth. More layers, more depth. So, nice big float of that blue. I'm going to walk this out a little. I want to come about 1/3 of the way with each side, because we're creating some roundness on this. And I'm going to walk that float out a little. There we go. And that leaves this 1/3 in the center as our highlight area. I'm just going to soften a line I saw there. There we go. So we've got that first shading in. It's looking pretty good. We are going to deepen that a little bit. Need to learn patience with layers. Yes. Oh, I know. Donna, we all like that that immediate gratification, but it's so rewarding when you maintain a little patience and do everything in layers. I'm a very impatient painter. I want to get to that as well. Hence this. That's why I use that heat gun all the time, because I really want to get to that next layer really quick. Now, I've got. Trying to find my dry brush. There it is. Now I've got a cheapy dry brush here. I don't know what it is, to be honest. Been kind of addicted to this thing, but I'm going to use a stencil brush. The blue color is Deep Midnight Blue, the shading color. The base coat is Williamsburg Blue. And those rust bits that you see on the pot are red spice. So we're going to, I love doing this part, we're going to put in a little highlight. I'm going to use a little bit of warm white, just a little. The watering can is going to get a lot more realistic shortly. So a little bit of warm white, don't need much. I'm using a stencil brush for this bit. And this one is just warm white, and we're using very little paint. So make sure you blot. And we're going to go up the center of our watering can. Oh my goodness, too much color. So my highlight focuses in this very center of the can and then gradually comes out to the sides. Okay. And then I'm going to pick up a little bit more warm white. And we're going to put a highlight right in the middle. So the lightest portion of this is right in the center, like so. And you want it to fade out on either side. We're also going to do one here. Don't forget, you got to put one on that nozzle too. So there, there, there. I want to highlight on this rim down at the bottom, and I want one here as well. It's just a dry brush and it does not have to be perfect. Like so. So the reason that I put it on first is this. We're going to take a little bit of sand gray. I like sand gray. This is a gorgeous, warm gray tone. It's very light. And we're going to take a little bit of Williamsburg blue, which is our base color. And you notice all these black stripes that we've got in here? We're going to use a rigger and we're going to brush mix a little color. So we're going to take a fairly generous, let me see if I can show you this a little clearer, fairly generous little daub of that Williamsburg blue, if you look up in the corner. And then you're going to take a little bit of that sand gray and we're going to make a slightly lighter value of that Williamsburg. Just a little lighter. And then with the rigger, you're going to paint in that ridge. It's just a little bit, one value lighter. That's what I want to say, about one value lighter. And we're going to paint in that ridge. And there's a few of them. There's one here. There's one here. And I prefer to do this after everything is done. You'll see why in a second. Once you've got all of your shading and highlight on your watering can, I like doing this afterwards. Simply because it gives you the ability to clean up a few things, but at the same time, you can put these in quite easily with very little effort. But it also, instead of going back in and highlighting all of this, you can start at the mid value, just like you do everything else. There we go. And then we've got that little piece across the bottom. That broad bottom ridge. Here we go. Okay, I think I've got them all. Now, I just realized that I missed a spot on this. I missed a piece right here, this little crossbar on our watering can. There we go. So I'm going to dry that. We're going to come back to our little 3/8 angle. We've got our highlights in on the top of the spout. We've got the highlights in along the edge and on the front of our watering can. So now we're going to give this a lot more dimension. I'm going to pick up a little bit of asphaltum. And we're going to put a float all the way across underneath that little ridge that we just painted in. Nice little float. And this is where you're going to see a little more dimension pop up. At all of these little seams here. I'm going to put in a float of asphaltum. And it also deepens the shadow wherever you have that rust. So that rust gets deeper too. So don't forget, float underneath that little ridge, underneath those leaves, like so. I love this part because this is where this can really starts to take shape. This is where the dimension comes in. And it is not a strong float. It's not a ton of color, but it makes a world of difference on this can. Just brings it across, defines that ridge. Look at that. So now it's got more and more depth. So I'm going to dry this. And I'm going to pick up a little more of that deep midnight blue. And we're going to shade the corners, the edges of those ridges out here, like that. Just like we shaded the can, so it's going to be about 1/3 of the way. 1/3. I'm going to come in here, shade this. And I'm going to shade under those leaves like so. There we are. And don't forget that handle. Got to get that shadow in there too. And then we're going to put a shadow up in here. Now the handle, you're only going to have a portion of this because there's pine boughs going to cover it. So I'm going to bring a little of that rusty tone into those little pieces here, onto that ridge, so to speak, for no other reason than just to continue that sort of rusty look to it. It just tones that a little. There we go. Now I've got a rigger, and we're going to start adding some highlights to those ridges. What am I shading with? A little asphaltum and a little bit of deep midnight blue. So I've got a little bit of thinned warm white. And right in this highlight area, I'm going to lightly stroke a little bit of warm white. Keep it in line with the highlight that we put in. And it can fade out. It doesn't have to be really bright. Any highlights that you put in all have to line up with the others. So there we go. Little highlight in here. Same here. We need a little bit there. Now, the watering can has little, let's call them eyes or holes. I don't like to use a dot to do them because I find that's just a little too perfect. So I'm using a little bit of that deep midnight blue and a tiny little float like so. Just a few of them. They're just little shadows. And that gives you the look of those holes without being in your face. So there's your watering can. Now you can adjust the shadows as much or as little as you like. So if you want them deeper in areas, go ahead and make them darker in areas. If you find your highlights aren't bright enough, adjust your shadows. There's this thing about white. It'll only get so bright. So if you've put in all of that light and you're still not getting the depth or the brightness that you want, don't play with the highlights anymore. Start playing with the shadows. They're going to give you a lot more. So a little depth back here. Adjust those shadows a little. That's half the fun of this. There you go. Fast and easy watering can. I love the fact that this looks so rustic. Now we really want to make this look rusticer. I like that word, rusticer. I'm going to take my little fugly brush and a little bit of thinned asphaltum, and we're going to focus on the watering can. And I'm going to spatter this with just a little bit of asphaltum. Heavily thinned. We want to create some fine spatter on it. You could do it with a little bit of asphaltum. You could do it with a little bit of lamp black. You could even come in with a little bit of that red spice if you want to. And you can do as much as or as little as you like. So if you really want this to look battered, then by all means go for it. You can do so much with just a little bit of spatter. It just makes this look a little more worn. So there's our watering can. It's not a really hard one. So our next trick, we're going to build up that background a little bit. I'm going to grab a nice big round brush and a little bit of heavily thinned warm white. And this is our tabletop back here. And we're going to put just a loose wash of warm white. Very loose. Tuck it in. Bring it up. All the way up if you want to. There we go. Now, I've just sort of scumbled that in there. It's going to look very watery and loose. And you're going to take a mop. You're just going to soften it a little. Just like that. Done. And we're going to do the same thing over here. Just scumbling it in. It's not perfect. All it's going to do is just define the tabletop. That's all this does. Provides a little light in the background. That's it. And then we're going to take that mop and soften that a little. I want to soften that a bit more. There we go. Beauty. It's a super easy way to create a little contrast back there. And it's subtle. It doesn't have to be really in your face. A denture brush for... Great idea. We're going to dry that. I love this watering can. So our next step for this piece is to start developing all of that greenery. And I want to start with this beautiful pine that's back here. And the color I'm using is burnt orange. It's so much easier if you work from the background out. So for our pine, we're going to use, where is my rigger? Got a rigger, and I'm using burnt orange. Now, you could use the red spice. The only problem is the red spice is a little less opaque. So red spice, and I'm going to use a rigger to create a irregular fine line. Let it come to a point like this. Here's one. We have another one back here. Now I'm using burnt orange. I love burnt orange. Then again, I love orange. I love any kind of orange. Neon orange, orange flame. So I don't want these too straight, and I don't want them perfect by any means. But I do want to bring them up. There we go. So a little bit of burnt orange. Yes, Lori, it is. So a little bit of burnt orange. I'm going to dry that real quick. And I'm going to find my liner brush. I want my long liner. Now we're going to create that fluffy look by using 3 values of green. So I'm using one of the new colors this year, which is this one, Avocado Toast. I'm using a little bit of Margarita, and I'm using Plantation Pine. And then just for giggles, I'm putting a little Peacock Teal, which you probably think isn't really a great Christmas color, but it really is. So a little bit of Peacock Teal. Love Peacock Teal. So our pine boughs, we're going to start with Plantation Pine. Now, in the line drawing, when you have a look at your line drawing, you're going to follow the direction of those lines that I've put in. So a little bit of Plantation Pine. You might need to thin it out a little bit. So turn your piece upside down and you're going to pull it out at an angle. So Plantation Pine. You're going to stroke in some Plantation Pine. Nice fine lines. Boys and boys. That liner brush has seen better days, methinks. There's a nice liner. So it's hard to see this Plantation Pine, but pull it out. Nice little angle. They can be fairly evenly spaced, and it's okay to let them overlap. They're going to overlap anyway. Just like that. Doesn't show up very well on this black, but we need that green back there. So, da-da-da. So there is our Plantation Pine. Don't forget to tuck some down in here too. Those little lines back there, they need some back there. So just bring it to the edge of that red line. Like so. This is layers, more depth. Easy peasy. Hi, Cheryl. Cheryl D'Agostino is with us. Nice to have you. I like nice loose strokes. I don't like things to look heavily drawn, I think is the word. that I'm looking for. I find a lot of the time when you see some pine boughs painted, they look very static. Unfortunately, Shannon, I can't, and I know that this color isn't easy to see. This is as close as I can get with the camera. It'll be easier in a second once I switch to a different green. There we go. And this is just that first layer. And it is difficult to see. So that's the plantation pine. So now I'm going to switch to avocado toast. This one's a little lighter. Well, actually, it's a lot lighter. But it still has that brighter green. It pairs really nicely with the plantation pine. So I'm going to stroke this in. You can go over the plantation pine or in between it. So if you find yourself overstroking, here we go. This is a little easier to see. If you find yourself overstroking, try not to do it too perfectly. I've always found that if everything is, in between and everything is perfect, it tends, oh goodness, that's all I need. Drop my brush on my piece. Wouldn't be the first time. So there we go. If you pay too much attention to it as you're doing it, and you have plantation pine, and then in between you have exactly one stroke of the avocado toast, and then everything is too evenly spaced or too evenly painted, it starts to look very static. And I prefer things to not look static. I prefer things to look like they are. And so we get this overstroking. See how it's going over top of the other one? And then it doesn't look harsh or calculated. It comes out looking very soft. And we need those branches to lay over the one before it. So they can go in between, they can go over top, it doesn't matter. And you can put an extra layer if you want to. I like the softer look of this. It makes life more fun when things are relaxed. This is supposed to be enjoyable. There we go. And you can make these as short or as long as you like. So if you want them to look short and bushy, go ahead with short and bushy. If you want them to look longer, more like fur, then make them longer. If you want them to look soft and fluffy, then put them closer together and more layers. And I kind of like the soft and fluffy. So we're getting there. We're getting up those layers. Oops. There we go. Just a little too heavy-handed there. Soft and fluffy. And even though that plantation pine sort of melds into the black, it does affect how this looks. So don't leave it out. It adds another layer to this. There we go. What brush am I using? This one is a 5/0 extra long detail liner. That's the only difference. This one's a black gold. I usually use my Micron, but my Micron is on its last legs, methinks. I'm going to have to get some new brushes soon, I think. I found a dollar store scrumbler the other day because mine was toast. And so I've been using a dollar store one. And it's okay, but I miss my good one. Okay, so I've got that avocado toast in there. And it does make those pine boughs look quite a bit softer. So it's time to grab a brighter highlight. So I've got a little bit of margarita. It's that lime green color, that really bright margarita tone. I love that color. And I'm going to use this a little sparingly. And I'm going to put just a lighter value, just a few strokes of this in. I don't want to get too heavy-handed with it. But I do love it, and I'm going into the gaps with the green. I love that. This is more like a highlight on the avocado, if that makes any sense. So I'm just filling in some gaps and highlighting a little bit. Here we go. Fast and easy. But it does make these pine boughs look softer and softer each time you do that. So how much you use is entirely up to you. But it's the next layer that's going to be fun. So here we go, a little bit of that margarita to fill in the gaps and to fluff this up and bring us into a nice little highlight. Look at that. So our pine boughs are really starting to look quite fluffy, which is what I was looking for. I wanted that nice fluffy look. Makes it easy. Look at that. Now we have one more step. We're going to use a little bit of peacock teal. I love this color. It's so pretty. And I like this. It cools off these greens. Hi, Lucy. So I'm going to do a little bit of Joe Sonia. And I got to think about where this highlight is going to go. And I like it out here, but I want just a few little nice light strokes. Again, try to fill in a few little gaps wherever you figure it's needed. And keep them fine. You don't want to have these big globs of color on there. But this little bit of teal, look at what it does for those pine boughs. Just cools them off really nicely. And part of it too is that we have green leaves and green waxy leaves and lots of high yellow greens. And this would get a whole bunch of the same thing if I didn't bring in another color. And so I wanted to bring in something that was a little cooler because these are all going to be warmer tones. So I went with a little bit of that peacock teal, and it really does make a lovely difference to our pine boughs. And again, as I said, you can use as much or as little as you like. So look how pretty that is with that little bit of teal in there. It's not in your face, but it does wonders for that little pine bough. And so I'm going to bring a little in here as well. I do like it as a filler. It does fill things out very nicely. And it's soft. It's not an in-your-face color, but you don't really expect to see, I think, is the part of it too. Like that. Pretty, pretty. Now we're going to highlight that the stems on this pine bough a little bit too. And I'm going to do that with a little bit of orange flame and a little bit of asphaltum. And that's going to change it yet again. So look at that. Oh, love it. I like them to look a little fluffy but not solid. It does give it a blue spruce look. So I've got a little bit of orange flame. Now orange flame is a little more transparent, so I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of warm white with it. Just a titch. I just want to make it a little more opaque. And then we're going to, on the top edge of those branches, just put a little stroke of that orange. Just a little stroke on one side of each of those burnt orange stems. I'm putting it on the top side. Just so that we get that highlight in a little bit. There we go. And then I'm going to take a little bit of asphaltum and I'm going to, put a little bit on the underside, just a thin line on the underside of that burnt orange. Just a little, and it's just a stroke. It doesn't have to be perfect. There we go. And it makes that highlight pop. Ooh, sourdough bread. You're going to have to share your sourdough. So there we go. Look at that. We've got a little bit of pine. Looks kind of out there right now, but I'll make sure everything is dry before I move on to the next step. Holly, I love holly at in Christmas pieces. It's one of my faves. So, lush green. Great color. Absolutely great green. And this is what I'm going to use to base coat all of these leaves. I'm going to start with these ones down here. And this is not a perfect base coat, doesn't have to be. It does not need to be fully opaque. But it does need to fill the space. So if you've painted with me or done any of my patterns, you know that I very rarely base coat more than once. Simply because I put so many layers on, it really doesn't matter. So there's our leaf. Now there's a leaf in behind this watering can here, so that's got to get green too. Pretty pretty. Oh, I just picked up the wrong color. I picked up plantation pine. Oops. Oopsie. There we go. I love lush green. It's a great color for greenery. Great color for holly. And I'm going to show you a couple of alternatives for highlighting greens, especially for Christmas themed pieces. I think a lot of the time we get very married to just sticking with very traditional greens when it comes to doing this type of thing. And I have a couple of suggestions if you want things to take on a bit more interest, a little more contemporary color palette, if you will, and still stay within that traditional format. So I think we all have painters that we really admire. I have a number that I really admire, and for completely different reasons. One painter that I particularly admire, and it is for her color palettes. Her color choices are just so gorgeous. It's Paulette de Guerre. I can never pronounce her name properly. She has just these very beautiful, very traditional designs, but she uses the most gorgeous color palettes. She has lots of teals and crazy reds and pinks, and her color palettes are just yummy. So if you ever see any of her designs or a pattern for her stuff, you will not be disappointed. Her color palettes are beautiful. I don't paint a lot of traditional toll painting. Mine tends to be a little all the way out there sometimes. I love incorporating faux finishes and stencil designs, and I like a little bit of realism added, and Paulette does very traditional design work, and her work is beautiful. But her color palettes are just, yummy. I love her color combinations, and she's just utterly fearless when it comes to choosing color, which is marvelous. So you see a lot of teals and, vibrant tones in her work, which is so refreshing. I've had several of you paint me ornaments for Christmas, and I have a few of them that are Paulette's designs, and they're among my favorites. The color palettes are just beautiful in them. Those gorgeous pops of teal and turquoise and whatnot that she puts into her work are just stellar. Another one that I really admire is Chris Hoy. She creates the most interesting textures, and she always has a lovely color palette, but it's the textures and interesting movements that she creates in her pieces that really appeal to me. I can never pronounce De Guerre. Paulette de Guerre. Her work is gorgeous. She was just teaching at NET, and I so wanted to go, but couldn't. And more doctor's appointments next week. This getting old is for the birds. I'm really quite put out. It's entirely inconvenient. There we go. Holly leaves, 1 coat, lush green. I missed a spot right there. There we go. One coat, lush green. That's it. Gesser. The Gesser. Okay. Finally, thank you, Sue. De Gesser. Her stuff is beautiful. And it's her color combinations really do it for me. She just chooses gorgeous colors. So I'm going to dry this really well. Golden, yeah, I know, Sue. Heather Reddick is another. Not only do I admire Heather, because she's just an awesome lady, but her artwork is extraordinary. Beautiful Zostava style paintings. But again, a lot of what really appeals to me in that work is her color palettes. She uses very non-traditional color palettes. She puts colors in that, for all intent and purpose shouldn't necessarily work together, but they do. And it's her color palettes. They just talk to me. Yeah. Am I wrong, Nancy? Paulette de Gesser. I know I get that wrong, but her work is just so pretty, and I love her color palettes. Janet. Well, thank you, Janet. That's a lovely thing to say. I appreciate that. It came from King Art. Oh, I don't know. I'm over the age thing too. Yep. Whoa! Goodness gracious. So we're going to shade these leaves with a little bit of black green. I like black green. It's a great color. And I'm going to shade underneath each of the leaves. And this is where we get that great depth in here. So lots of black green to separate these leaves. And then once we've got the leaves done, we're going to tackle that little bird. I know it's a French name. Aw, Janet, that's sweet. Thank you. De Gesser. I'm not sure if that, I know it's a French name, but that doesn't mean that I can pronounce it well. I'd have to hear it at least once. But all I know is that she's got an extraordinary sense of color. And so it's just so, her work is so pretty because of that. She uses great colors. So here we go with that black green. I'm shading underneath all those berries and separating all of those leaves with a float of black green. Here we go. And I like to leave the painting the berries until after the leaves are completely done, simply because as I'm floating and shading, I'm going over top of a lot of these berries, and I don't want to have to go back in and touch things up. So leave it until you're done with the leaves. So I've got that initial shading done in here. Love it. I like the drama that this color creates. that black green creates when it comes to shadows. Creates a nice little punch of drama. Don't forget, we've got a leaf in here that needs shading too. And I think I've got it. There we go. I know, she has the most beautiful color palettes. Palette de Gesser. Or Degassar. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. I'd have to hear it just once. So once you have that first shading in, then we're going to go back and put that center vein shadow in. And this is so fun. I like those arches, those curves. Makes those leaves look more elegant with that nice curve. Just like that. That little shadow on the center vein is very important because that is what establishes the direction that the curve of the leaf is going to take. And I want them to sort of bow out. So there we go. Oops. There we are. Look at that. And these leaves don't take that long to paint, quite honestly. There we are. And then we get the ones down at the bottom. Aw, Mary, thank you. It's lovely. I love playing with color. Sometimes it's the color combination you least expect that provides you with the most drama. And I like to have a little drama in things. Rusty years. So I'm going to dry that. So we have leaves. Boy, do we have leaves. Oodles of them. Shannon, thank you. I'm not acting my age either. I've never been this age, so I have no idea how to. So I love putting a little pop of color in. And I'm going to use a little bit of Margarita as my highlight color on these leaves. And I'm focusing my highlights out towards the points. So, highlight. I know it's going to look a little garish. And then I'm going to come along this leading edge to make that leaf stand out. This point. There we go. And again, this is not a neat and tidy float. I pay attention to the points. And then come down. So it makes those leaves stand out a little bit. This leaf is tucked underneath that one, so the highlight is further down on the point, because the light's obstructed by the other leaf. There we go. Little bit on that point. Remember this leaf in here? Little bit. These are soft. They don't have to be perfect. It's another color for Margarita. You could use olive green. You could use matcha green. All you really need is something with a lighter value. You just need something with a high yellow content. So a matcha green will work too. There we go. I'm a big fan of margarita because it's not fully opaque. It has a little bit of white in it, so it still gives you that brightness, but it's not a really chalky. It's just paint. You don't like it, it's changeable. Absolutely. It's just paint. Couldn't agree more, Sue. Look at that. Now, I love playing with unusual color combinations and vying away from what would be considered traditional. So I like to pop, oh goodness, that's a little too strong. I like to pop some other colors in. So we're going to use, instead of a traditional red for the base color of our berries, we're going to use something else. I'm going to use the traditional red as our shading color for the berries. But our base color is going to be something a little off the beaten track. So your kids are holding the bail money, are they, Janet? That is a great comment. Thank you. So now when you look at those leaves, they're really taking shape quite nicely. So we've only got a few more to do. And these highlights do not have to be all that bright. And they can vary from one to the other. So they can be brighter here and less so there. We're just giving a light area on our leaf. The next color I use is going to make the difference. Oh, goodness. Blend a little more. I didn't blend enough. So I got solid color. There we go. Okay, so. And then we've got this little leaf down here. Just the point of it is going to have a highlight. Just like that. It's sort of tucked away. So, we've got that initial highlight on. And I'm going to grab a new color. If I can find it. I'm going to use a little bit of neon. I really want these leaves to take on a bit more oomph. We need a little drama in here. So I'm going to pick up a little bit, just a little bit of neon. And I'm going to bring just a little of that to the point. That little bit of neon green, it just adds a little vibrancy to things. And because it's a neon, it's a little on the transparent side, so it needed something a little more opaque to give us that zing. And I love a little neon in things. I just think it brings a nice little punch. And it doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be everywhere, but it brings a nice little zing. So we look at this leaf, it looks okay. This one underneath is fine, but that little bit of neon just makes it pop. So a little neon in there is never a bad thing. And then we're going to crisp everything up when we deepen that center vein a little bit. And because we're working over top of a slightly more opaque, lighter green, that neon really starts to take shape. Really gives this a nice pop. Look. Love it. So here we go. So those holly leaves are really starting to talk. Here we go. And these are not perfect floats. It's just getting a little color in there. And they're fairly transparent and they dry funny. They dry a little more transparent too, so it gives you a lot more control. So there we go. We've got a little punch of that neon in there. I like it. Oh. It does. Adds a nice little zing. Look at that. So if I take a little bit of plantation pine and I come in here and deepen those shadings, just put a little float of plantation down that center vein only, it sharpens and gives them that slick look. And that's, I think, when it comes to holly, that's what you need. You need that sort of glossy look to the leaves. And having that little extra shadow, especially after all of that highlighting, that little bit of plantation pine just gives those leaves that polish that we were looking for. So it crisps up those shaded areas, defines those center veins, and gives you those nice, sharp, polished looking leaves. Pretty, pretty, pretty. So I'm going to dry that. And then we're going to add a highlight to these leaves, a final highlight to these leaves with an outline. So make sure these are nice and dry. I'm going to grab my liner brush. And we're going to take a little bit of that neon. And I'm going to mix it with a little bit of margarita. It's going to give us a really bright green. And then we're going to do this. I love this part. Just a little fine line at the outside edges of the leaves. Not all the way up. Make sure that you start on the highlighted edge. Need to thin it a little bit more. There we go. There we are. Interesting tidbit about holly, that holly actually doesn't have points on the leaves until something has tried to eat it. I didn't know this until recently, but it's a defense mechanism for the plant to prevent animals or creatures from eating it. So if one of your local deer has a go at a holly plant, the next group of leaves that grow in will have points. And it's just the plant's way of protecting itself. I thought that was very interesting. And I like this little, slightly lighter value. It gives you the ability to add little details to the ends of the leaves so you can sharpen the points, etc. I just found that to be a very interesting tidbit about holly. it sharpens its own points to prevent it from being eaten. Whoops. My liner. There we go. So just a simple fluid, fine, and the key word here is fine outline with that neon green mixed with margarita. And it helps define and sharpen those leaves. Very pretty. Here we go. Almost done with this. Just got 1 or 2 more leaves to do. And as I said, they don't have to be absolutely perfect. If they go off the edge of the leaf, that's fine too. Don't worry too much about it. But I like to extend that point a little bit. Just gives you those sharp little details at the edges of these leaves. Pretty, pretty. And then while you're at it, something that I forgot to do in my original was this. Even though it's in the line drawing, I forgot to do it. Was to add that little curly Q. Gotta have a curly Q. I'm a firm believer. Looking good. Now, holly is something that does not grow in my area. Well, it might, but I've never seen it here. I know that some people use it in their gardens and whatnot, but it does not grow in the wild here. I remember seeing it in Germany, and I remember seeing it in the UK when I was there, growing wild, but not... Oh! Not something that grows here. So I'm going to dry this really well, and then we're going to start working on those berries. We're going to use something a little bit different. I'm going to grab my favorite rigger, and I'm going to give myself a clean palette because this one is a tragedy. So a color that I have become very enamored with over the years is this tea berry. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous coral tone. I'm going to start putting things back in my paint rack here. Good gravy, Marie. So our berries, one of the things about working on a black background, oh, Kaylin, how many years have I been doing this? 50 this year? 50 years. I started painting. First time I ever took a painting class personally was 1975. So that's 50 years. I've been teaching for more than 30 at this point. So yes, I've been doing this quite a while. So we're going to base coat our berries with a little bit of warm white. And we have 2 types of berries. The larger berries that you see tucked in here are going to be the red berries. So I'm using a coat of warm white on the larger berries first. So nice, simple. It does not have to be fully opaque, but we're doing the larger berries first. I'm going to do the brush method first, then I'm going to show you another trick for the white berries. So, the bigger berries are all of the red ones. The smaller berries are all of the white ones. Now, any time that I'm putting something like this in, I try to aim for an odd number. It's just a thing. So here we go. All of these larger berries are going to be warm white. And I try to keep the numbers odd. Sounds silly, but you'll understand why. So there we go. There are my warm white berries. And I'm going to dry this. And then I've got berries down here too. Now, every time I paint something like this, the number of berries varies. And I might change my mind and paint the, more red than I had initially intended. But I'm going to do 3 and 3 here. So we've got white berries. These ones I painted red in the first one, but I'm not going to this time. So I'm going to make sure these are good and dry, and then we're going to base coat that. Did I start when I was 2? No, I was 12. I was 12 years old. I've been painting in anything since then. So I'm going to use tea berry to base coat my red berries. The reason I put down the white is to inhibit how much that black background affects the color of your berries. So I put a coat of warm white down for 2 reasons. One, I only have to put 1 coat of the red tone on to get a nice opaque looking berry. And it isn't affected by the black that's underneath. If I were to put down this tea berry just over the black, it tends to gray it out a little, and it loses some of that liveliness of this color, which I really didn't want. So put a little white down. I do the same with yellows. Put a little white down underneath it. It makes a world of difference. Yellows and reds are notoriously transparent, so it's always a good idea to put a little white underneath it. It helps make the berries stay nice and bright, too. That's the other thing. There's a number of colors that you can put underneath reds to give you good coverage, but they don't always give you the lively work to maintain the brightness of the colors. So I like a white. Sand gray works really nicely, too. So here we go. Yep. There we go. So now I'm going to show you a trick for the white berries. I mean, you could do any of these berries this way, but I'm going to show you a trick. This is using a stencil or a template. Hi, Kay. So I'm picking up a little bit of warm white. This is for the white berries. And I'm going to find the stencil that fits the berry size the best. And then I'm going to stencil the berry. Comme ça. 1 berry. And then move your stencil off and stencil the next berry. Just using a little bit of warm white. And this just helps maintain those perfectly round berries. And it also speeds up your base coating a lot. And all you have to do is find a polka dot that's the same size as the one that's in your line drawing, which is fairly easy to do. You can use these templates. God knows there's lots of them out there. And I use templates all the time. It's not a bad idea. And it keeps things consistent. Very consistent. So there we are. Look at that. This is just the easiest way to get those nice consistent berries, all the same size, all perfectly round, and you don't have to work hard to do it. And voila. So now we have berries, all the berries. We have white berries, and I did it all with stencil. What is a rigger brush? Nancy, this one is a rigger. This one is a liner. They look very similar when it comes to the shape and how they're made. The difference is that when you press down on a liner, it forms a curved top, and you can paint little teardrops and comma strokes with a liner brush. With a rigger, let's see if I can do this. When you press down on it, it doesn't form a curved edge. It forms a flat edge like a chisel. So it's squared off instead of rounding out like a round or a liner brush does. This one flattens out to a chisel. So that's the difference between the two. I use these for lettering all the time because of that chisel edge. So look at that. We have berries. So this is where we're going to use that traditional red, that country red color. We're going to use this for our shading. So I'm going to find my small angled shader, which is my 3/8. I'm not comfortable with 1/4 inch. I like a 3/8. So I don't use 1/4 inch or anything smaller a lot of the time, but a 3/8 works very well. So we're going to blend that out so that we get a nice float. And we're going to shade the bottom right of each of those red berries with a float of country red. Just like so. Et voila. And I like country red. It's nicely opaque, but it makes these berries glow. I love this color for these berries. And that little bit. Here we go. This one needs another little float here. There we are. So we've got a nice little float of country red on the lower right side of each of those berries. Look at that. And then I'm going to grab a little bit of asphaltum. Little bit. And I'm going to deepen that color with a little float of asphaltum. Just deepens that shading, gives us a nice little shadow. There we go. So we've got the shading on our red berries. Now we're going to do the shading on our white berries. So we're going to use a little bit of Bahama Blue. I love Bahama Blue on white berries. So we're going to shade the berries, the white ones, with Bahama Blue on the lower right. So from the bottom up, little float of Bahama Blue. There we go. Just like that. I like Bahama Blue for white berries. It's going to give them all of the tone that we need. So I'm going to rinse my brush. And I'm going to dry these. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of asphaltum. And I'm going to thin it out a little bit. I don't want it full strength. And we're going to deepen the shading on each of those berries with a float right over the Bahama Blue with that asphaltum. Just like so. And the first thing you're going to notice is they don't look blue anymore. They take on sort of a greenish cast. Just a faint green tone. And if you've ever seen mistletoe berries, they have a slightly green undertone to them. And that is exactly what we want. It also mutes the berry considerably. So I'm going to come back with a little bit of warm white. And again, you're going to blend this out. You don't want it full strength. And we're going to put a highlight just in from the edge of the berry. Just come in from the edge, just slightly. A sliver. You just want a sliver of that base color showing through. Just a little bit. And that little highlight is going to make our berry take on more of an orb look. There's that little highlight. Again, we're just coming in slightly from the edge. And I'm doing that to all the white berries. Like so. And then I'm going to do the same thing to all of the red ones. I'm going to come, oof, too much. I had too much paint in the brush. So, little float of heavily thinned warm white. In from the edge, just slightly. Leave just a little bit of that tea berry color showing. And now we're going to have some fun with this. I'm going to grab a little bit of neon pink. I'm going to pick up a little bit of that neon pink. And we're going to float it right over top of that white highlight. That warm white highlight. That little bit of neon pink. And these berries are going to get very hot very quick. Look at that. So those berries are going to glow. So I'm going to dry that. And then we're going to put just a titch of warm white for a highlight on our berries. So to the upper left, we're just going to put a tiny little dot of white. And it's going to make our berries glow and sparkle. And we're going to do the same thing to our white right at that point of highlight. I'm going to put a dot of white. right on the edge of that little highlight that you put on there. And we're going to have some very nice berries. We've got lovely berries. So I'm going to dry this, and then we're going to stroke in some stems. Eugenia, Daskalea. Eugenia, Daskalea. Hello. So I'm going to break out my liner, if I can find it. There it is. And a little bit of margarita. And we're going to put in just a few stems to connect these berries so that they're just not floating out there. I just want a few little stems. They don't have to be much. There we go. Just to connect the berries so that they look there. So, now we're going to tackle our little bird. Now, this little fellow is not all that detailed. Oh my goodness, I can't even talk today. So I'm going to dry that. And then we have our little bird out here. And I wanted him to pick up some of the other colors that were in this. So if you're wondering what type of bird it is, I have no idea. I just sort of went with a cute little bird because I love a cute little bird. I am going to grab a small angled shader. I don't use these very often. I think I've had the same one for about a decade because I don't use the quarters very often. Patina works. Yes, it does. So we're going to bring a little of this color in, that burnt orange, and we're going to use some cobblestone on our little bird. So we need a puddle of cobblestone. Yep, grab the right one. And I need a round brush because we're going to put a very gentle wash of cobblestone onto our bird. So this little guy has got, oh goodness. This little guy has got feathers here and here. And I want a little of that cobblestone on his belly. Like so. So it's just a loose little wash. Doesn't have to be neat and tidy. Like so. And then these feathers are just little strokes, straight lines. And this is the extent of our base coat for our bird. He's gray. And I'm going to dry this. He doesn't have to be perfect. He's just a little bit of gray. So I've got a little bit of burnt orange. I love this color. But I like my oranges. So I'm going to, this bottle is almost empty. So I'm going to put a little orange on my palette. So a little bit of burnt orange, and I'm going to put a little bit of orange flame. And we have asphaltum. And then I need a little bit of salted caramel. There we go. So we've got a little bit of salted caramel. I need my liner brush for this. We're going to paint his beak with a little bit of salted caramel. Just a simple little beak. Easy peasy. And then we're going to use that burnt orange to paint his chest and his face. So when I do this, I'm doing this in little strokes. I don't want this to be solid. So I'm just going to paint this in little strokes like this. Da-da-da. We're not looking for a solid base coat. I want a little bit of texture in there. And the same with the face. It's just a few little strokes. It's not fully opaque. So he's going to look a little rough. See what I mean? Do I use an underwet? No, I don't. I just, my paints don't dry very fast in the studio. So we live in a fairly humid area, so I don't need a stay wet palette. But there we go. So I've got a little bit of burnt orange on his face. And I'm going to dry that. So our next step is we're going to start shading our bird. So I'm going to take a little bit of salted caramel. I love this. It's like a golden yellow. And I really love this for this part of the belly. I want to bring a little of that yellow up right there. That's that salted caramel. So underneath the wing and up under here and then onto his belly a little bit. Look at this. So there we go. We've got a little bit of that salted caramel. And I want to bring a little of it into his head as well. Just a little float like that. Just a little. It doesn't need to be a ton. So there, we've got that nice little float in there. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit of that cobblestone. And I'm going to blend as if to float. Now, over here on his back, above his wing, I'm going to put a float to shape these feathers, just like that. Just a nice little float. See how it shapes those feathers at the back of the head? Right there on the shoulder. And right here. So look at that. We've got feathers. And then I stand my brush up on the chisel edge and I do this. And I follow that shape of those feathers. It's just a long chisel blend just to fill in that color. And I'm going to do the same on the tail feathers. So brightest color at the end of the feather and then just work it back like that. So he's got nice bright feathers. And then on his chest over here, we're going to use that same color and make little feathers. Little short floats like so. And they're just little U-shaped bits. Like that. The color is cobblestone. So I'm going to dry this. And I'm going to make sure it's good and dry. What do I use to thin out my become too thick in the 2-ounce jars? I put a couple of drops of my fast dry glaze in there. Whenever my paint gets a little thick inside the bottles, I put a couple of drops of the fast dry glaze. So our shading color for our little bird is asphaltum. So I'm going to put a float underneath the wings, going down the tail feather, and then underneath here, and underneath those little feathers there. And then we need a float of that on the back of the head. Just like that. And then I'm going to put a little float under the cheek and out to the beak. Hey, that rhymes. There we go. So our little guy has more and more texture. Now, I have a tendency to drop a little glaze into my paint every once in a while, and it just keeps them running really smooth. So we've got lots of little texture on the chest. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of warm white, and you're going to blend it. You don't want it full strength, but we're going to add a little highlight to the tips of these feathers. Just like that. And to the end of the tail feathers, we're going to put a little highlight. And then we're going to do this. Little highlight at the ends of these. And don't forget, you need a few here. And you need a little bit on the top of the beak. And now we're going to add the highlights to the chest and the face. And I'm going to do that with a liner. I'm going to pick up a little bit of that orange flame, and I'm going to throw a little bit of warm white into it, just a little. I don't want to make this like tangerine or something. I just want it to be a little brighter. And we're going to focus on the front of the, oh goodness, way too much. There we go. I'm going to use that liner to put some nice little strokes on the chest of our bird. Just like that. Nice little overlapping strokes. It's just a nice little highlight on the chest of the bird. A little bit of orange flame. And we're going to do the same on the head. Now, I like to bring a few little strands of that out onto the black. If you bring them out onto the black, it makes our little bird look a little fluffier. Here we go. And I do like the fluffy. Little birds should look fluffy. Just like that. And then you can take just straight orange flame and add a few little highlights here and there on the face with just the orange flame. And it does make a difference. It makes him pop a little bit. And I'm going to grab some lamp black. We don't need much, we just need a little. And I'm going to dip the handle of my liner in the lamp black and just dot the eye. So we just need a little round eye. And make sure it's dry enough. I'm going to use a little bit of warm white. I'm going to thin it out a little bit. We're going to add a definite highlight to the edge of these feathers here. Nice little rows like this. Do the same to these little tail feathers. And then a little dot to the upper right of the eye. Look at our little bird. And he's just a silly little bird. He's not a real bird. But we do want to add a few little highlights at the edges of some of these feathers. Just a little fine line with a little bit of warm white. Don't forget, we've got we want a fluffy tummy, so take a little bit onto the edge of the tummy here. There we go. So we have our little bird. Little guy is just all about the textures. So I'm going to dry him really well. And we're going to come over here and tackle our lettering. And I love lettering. I think lettering is a wonderful thing to add to artwork because I just like how it looks. It's just fun. And I had a rigger here somewhere. There it is. So I'm working with a number 2 rigger. And lots of Jus Sonia's Fast Dry Glaze. Love that stuff. And let's tackle that line. This is what we're going to use for our lettering. This is a number 2 rigger. I've loaded it with thinned warm white. And I'm going to pat it till it squares off. So I press it down on my palette until I get a chisel edge so you can see that it's squared off. It doesn't come to a point. And I'm going to press my chisel edge to the surface, push down on the brush until it fills the space. And there we go. There we go. I have always loved lettering. I love doing calligraphy. And when you find out that you can do it with a brush, it's just like the best thing ever. Especially when you get comfortable with it, you can do really beautiful gift pieces. And that rigger is fine enough when you turn it on to its point, which just means that you are using the point or the corner of that chisel but you can do beautiful, beautiful lettering with it. Little practice, you can do wonders with a rigger. The glaze medium that I use is by Jo Sonja. It's Jo Sonja's Fast Dry Glaze. It works beautifully for this, and I use it for everything. I use it for thinning my paint for line work. I use it to adding it to my base coats. It will help your paint rest so that you get no brush marks. It will self-level beautifully. I use it for faux finishing. I use it for floating, shading, and highlighting. I use it for detail work, line work, etc. It's just my do-everything glaze medium. It is the bomb. So there is my lettering. I'm going to dry this, and then we only have a couple of things left to do. I'm going to darken my tabletop a little bit because it needs some shading there. We're going to adjust a few highlights just to make sure everything is where it should be. So I'm going to float a little bit of lamp black. See, we've got a tabletop here. I'm going to grab my favorite eraser, Factus Black. Yep. I've got a Factus Black. I'm going to erase that graphite line that's right there. And I'm going to put a float of lamp black right there. There we are. And it's just to crisp up that tabletop, and it makes that look a little bit brighter. So I've got a little bit in here. I got a little bit right there. I'm also going to float underneath those leaves a little. But that little float of black just makes that tabletop line or that highlight show up better. So I'm going to make sure that this is really dry, and then I'm going to clean up the graphite lines. I loathe graphite lines. And I've got a Factus Black eraser. I love these. They're fantastic for removing graphite lines without polishing or damaging your paint. So you can erase like this without worrying about shiny spots, without worrying about it pulling your paint off, because that drives me nuts. And it just gives everything a nice finished look. Like so. Get rid of all those graphite lines. And this way, you've got a nice finished piece with no graphite. And same with the lettering. Get rid of all those graphite lines around your lettering. And I want to show you something. Take an angled shader and a little bit of asphaltum, because these letters, a little too bright. And just put a light wash of asphaltum over top of your lettering. Just a loose one, like so. Et voila. It just tones that lettering down a little bit. And when you get rid of all those graphite lines, it cleans everything up really nicely. So Renee should be coming down here shortly to set us up for our giveaways. Get the wheel ready. Now, if you want to, you could spatter this with a little bit of warm white. If you want to, you could add a few snowflakes, little dimensional snowflakes, if you want to. There's 101 things you could do to elaborate on this. It's just a fun piece to paint. I've done this on an 8x10 piece of MDF. And the reason I went with MDF is because they frame so beautifully, right? They come up really nicely. They add a little bit of elegance to this. So it's a super easy one to paint on. And it gives you such a lovely finished piece. So the surface is just an 8x10 piece of MDF. Super easy to work on. This one translates to canvas really, really nicely. It can be enlarged or reduced. It's one of those patterns that functions really well within an 8x10 or an 8.5x11. It's a super easy one to do. I'm playing with this idea with colored pencils because I really think this one would translate beautifully to colored pencil as well. So, super easy. I gotta grab my phone. And we'll tell Renee that it's wheel time. And he'll be down here to help us. Where's Renee? There we go. Now, there's always something on a piece like this that I like to tweak. So I'm going to grab my liner and a little bit of warm white because I like tweaking. I want to brighten up a couple of highlights in here. And I'm going to elongate some of these highlights a little bit. I like to brighten them up a little bit. Sometimes they just need a little. This one in the center here is a little wanting, I think. So I'm going to brighten that a little bit. There we go. Et voila. There we go. I love the brightening those highlights. It's just such fun. So, where is Renee? I don't know where Renee went. And he's the one that sets up the wheel. There he is. Hi, Maze. There's Maze. Oh. I interrupted his lunch. So.
No, you're not getting my sandwich. Take your ball.
She'd like the sandwich.
I would too.
Henrietta, thank you. That's a sweet thing to say. See, you're like getting here. So they're all. It's prize time. I'm going to switch it to prize time. There we go. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. It's a lot of fun to paint. And it makes such a unique Christmas decoration. You can have it hanging in your entryway or, if you're anything like me, I take the artwork down, put all the Christmas stuff up. So, wow, that wheel is loaded today.
Oh, no, I can't. There it is.
What are you doing? Trying to get it to expand.
Damn it.
There we go. Let's see. Oh my goodness. Carrie Anderson, pick me. Okay, so there is a ton of names on there. So I'm going to spin because I can.
What was this called?
This one in the Christmas garden. Liz Garcia.
L-A-Z? Yep.
Mm-hmm. So if your name is called on this wheel, hop over to the website at tracymoreau.net and click on the little speech bubble in the lower right-hand corner of this home screen and send us your shipping information, please. And the next one goes to Kathy McAllister.
Oh, there's no E.
Mick. And the last one goes to
Oh, that looks like K. Reynolds.
Kay Reynolds.
Yay. There we go.
Awesome.
And you can just
Yep.
exit out of that.
I can back out of that. There we go.
And
Face cam.
dang
I'm
it.
getting the hang of it, slowly but surely. Thanks, everybody, for joining us this Saturday. Next Saturday, we're going to be doing a floral, so join me for that. It's going to be a fun one, something along the lines for the Thanksgiving holidays in the U.S. So come and join me next Saturday, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. Get your paintbrushes ready. We're going to have a few laughs, and of course, we always have some fun giveaways. And in the meantime, everybody, mwah, stay safe. We love you.
Yay. Pet your dog.
Pet your dog.
Sorry, I got a mouthful.
Oh, forgot the microphone. Have a great weekend, everyone.